It was one of those calm mornings in Los Angeles when the city seemed to be taking a slow breath before the rush began. The sky was pale blue, the air smelled faintly of coffee and car exhaust, and the streets were already alive with people chasing their routines. In a quiet corner of Beverly Hills stood a high-end luxury store, one of those places where the windows gleamed like glass jewelry. Boxes and every item inside looked like it was meant for a magazine cover rather than a closet. Inside, the store was silent except for soft instrumental music and the distant click of heels on marble. The air conditioning carried the scent of polished wood and expensive perfume. Behind the counter stood two saleswomen, chatting quietly while pretending to organize handbags. They looked up every few minutes, scanning for customers who looked worthy of attention. That morning, the door opened softly, and a man stepped inside. He was tall but carried himself with a quiet ease, like someone who didn't want to draw attention. His hair was slightly messy and his jeans looked worn, the kind that came from years of wear rather than designer distressing. He wore a plain black t-shirt under a faded jacket and carried a simple backpack slung over one shoulder. At first glance, he looked like any other passerby who had wandered in by mistake, the kind of person who might be just looking. One of the saleswomen frowned slightly, her eyes narrowing in silent judgment. The other gave a polite but forced smile. "Good morning," the man said softly, his voice calm and kind. "I was just looking around, if that's all right." "Of course," one of them replied, though her tone made it sound like it wasn't really all right. He gave a gentle nod and began to walk through the aisles. The store was nearly empty except for one other customer, a woman who seemed to belong in this world of luxury. She was dressed head to toe in designer labels, her jewelry flashing under the lights and her perfume filling the air around her. She noticed the man almost instantly and raised an eyebrow. To her, he looked out of place, like a stranger wandering into the wrong neighborhood. The man stopped in front of a leather jacket hanging on a display. It was sleek, minimalist, and looked timeless, the kind of piece you'd wear for years. He touched the material gently, almost thoughtfully, like someone who appreciated craftsmanship more than price tags. He turned to the nearest saleswoman. "Excuse me," he said. "Could I take a closer look at this jacket?" The saleswoman hesitated, her smile tight. "That one is from our limited collection," she said. "It's quite expensive." "That's okay," he said simply. "I'd still like to see it." She sighed quietly and took the jacket down, handing it over without enthusiasm. As he slipped it on, it fit perfectly, comfortable, natural, like it was meant for him. He turned toward the mirror and smiled faintly, not because he looked rich or impressive, but because he liked the way it felt. From the corner, the woman watching couldn't help but chuckle softly. She leaned toward another shopper nearby and whispered, "He's really trying that on." "In here?" Her voice carried just enough to be heard. The man glanced her way for a brief moment. His expression didn't change, he didn't frown, didn't react. He simply looked back at his reflection, adjusted the collar and asked, "Do you have this in a larger size?" The saleswoman shook her head. "That one's the only piece left. And, well," she hesitated again, her tone carrying that faint hint of superiority. "It's quite a premium item. Maybe I can show you something more. Within reach?" The man smiled softly as if her words didn't sting at all. "Thank you," he said, handing the jacket back carefully. "It's a beautiful piece." She took it quickly, placing it back on the rack, already turning away to greet the next customer, a man in a tailored suit who looked like the kind of person they were happy to serve. As the suited customer entered, the woman who had laughed earlier walked toward the counter, still smirking. "You'd think people would know where they belong," she muttered to one of the employees, her voice dripping with amusement. He looked like he came in from a bus stop. One of the staff members tried not to laugh but couldn't hide a small grin. "You never know," she whispered. "Sometimes they're just browsing." The man, still quiet, had heard them. He didn't turn or confront anyone. Instead, he reached into his pocket, pulled out a folded note and placed it gently on the counter. "Thank you for your time," he said in that same soft voice. "You've been very helpful." Before anyone could respond, he gave a polite nod and walked out, the door closing softly behind him. For a few seconds, the store was silent. The woman at the counter shook her head, clearly amused. "What was that?" she said. "He thanked you for what?" The saleswoman shrugged. "I guess he thought he was being classy," she said, laughing. Maybe he's one of those wannabe actors. Outside, the man stepped into the bright Los Angeles sunlight. He paused for a moment on the sidewalk, adjusting the strap on his backpack. People walked past him, some in a hurry, some lost in thought. He blended in easily, not drawing a single stare. Across the street, a small cafe buzzed with the sound of steaming milk and soft conversation. He crossed over and slipped inside, greeting the barista with a friendly nod. The barista's eyes widened slightly in recognition but said nothing, treating him like any other customer. Just a black coffee. Please, the man said. Coming right up, the barista replied with a smile, clearly trying not to act starstruck. The man sat near the window, watching as the luxury store across the street continued its usual business. He wasn't angry. If anything, his expression was calm, maybe even peaceful. There was something in his eyes that suggested this wasn't the first time someone had judged him for how he looked. Inside the store, meanwhile, things were taking an unexpected turn. A young couple had walked in, excitedly whispering to each other as they headed straight for the counter. "Did you see him?" the man asked the saleswoman eagerly. "That was Keanu Reeves. He just walked past us outside." The store fell silent again. The woman who had laughed froze in place. "Wait, what did you say?" "Keanu Reeves," the customer repeated, still smiling. "He's right outside." "I can't believe he was here." The saleswomen looked at each other, their faces suddenly pale. The air in the room felt heavier now, thick with the weight of realization. The one who had handed him the jacket blinked rapidly, remembering every dismissive word she'd said. The woman who had mocked him felt her chest tighten. "No way," she whispered, stepping toward the window, but by the time she looked out, he was gone. The staff began whispering among themselves, some embarrassed, others panicking quietly. "Did he hear us?" one asked. "He must have heard us." The woman who laughed tried to brush it off. "I didn't say anything bad," she muttered, her voice defensive. "I was just joking." But everyone had seen her face. They'd heard her laugh. Across the street, Keanu was still sitting in the cafe, sipping his coffee slowly. He wasn't scrolling through a phone or reading anything. He just sat there, looking out the window, occasionally smiling as people passed. He seemed content being unnoticed. A young woman sitting nearby glanced at him a few times, finally gathering the courage to speak. "Excuse me," she said softly. "I'm sorry to bother you, but you're Keanu Reeves, right?" He smiled gently. "I am," he said, nodding once. "I thought so," she said, smiling nervously. "I just wanted to say I really admire you. Your movies, sure, but mostly the way you are. You seem so down to earth." Keanu chuckled lightly. "Thank you," he said. "That's very kind of you." She hesitated, then added, "You know, my mom once met you at a bookstore years ago. You helped her pick up her bags when they fell. She never forgot that." He looked surprised for a moment, then smiled. "That's sweet." "I'm glad she remembered." There was a warmth in his tone that made the young woman relax. She didn't take a photo or ask for an autograph, just smiled and went back to her coffee, as if she'd shared a small personal moment with someone she genuinely admired. Back at the luxury store, the employees were trying to carry on as if nothing had happened, but their voices trembled slightly. Every sound felt louder now. The footsteps on the marble, the clicking of hangers, even the distant music. The woman who had laughed couldn't focus. She kept replaying the moment in her head, his calm expression, the way he said thank you, the way he'd looked at that jacket like it meant something beyond fashion. She thought about her own words and winced. You'd think people would know where they belong. She suddenly felt small, shallow. She glanced toward the window again, half hoping he might walk back in so she could apologize, half praying he wouldn't. But Keanu didn't come back. He finished his coffee quietly, left a tip that was larger than the cost of the drink, and stepped back out into the sunlight. Instead of heading toward the main boulevard, he turned the corner toward a smaller street lined with independent shops. There, tucked between a bookstore and a vintage record shop, was a small boutique, a place most people walked past without noticing. He paused for a second, reading the sign, then smiled to himself and pushed open the door. The soft chime of the bell above the door marked the start of something no one in that luxury store could have predicted. The small boutique on the corner couldn't have been more different from the bright, polished luxury store he had just left behind. From the Thyssen Sutta, outside it looked quiet and a little old-fashioned, like a place that had been there for years without trying to impress anyone. The windows were clean but not perfect, and inside, the shelves were filled with handmade jackets, scarves, and boots that all carried the touch of real craftsmanship. When Keanu stepped in, a small bell above the door rang softly. The smell inside was warm, leather, coffee, and a hint of cedar. A man stood behind the counter, probably in his late 50s, with graying hair and kind eyes. He looked up immediately and smiled. Not the kind of smile that comes from training, but the kind that comes from genuine kindness. "Morning," he said cheerfully. "Take your time, look around. Everything's made by hand." Keanu nodded. "Thanks," he said quietly, glancing around the room. He ran his fingers along the sleeves of a few jackets, appreciating the texture. Each piece had tiny imperfections, but that was what made them beautiful. Proof that they were made by real people, not machines. The owner came over, still smiling. "You've got a good eye," he said. "That one there's from a small workshop in Oregon. The leather's vegetable tanned, so it'll age beautifully." Keanu lifted the jacket and felt its weight. "It's beautiful," he said softly. "Feels alive, you know." The man chuckled. "That's the right word for it. Too many clothes these days feel cold. These ones have stories." Keanu smiled at that. "Stories are what make things matter," he said. The owner didn't recognize him at first, which seemed to make the conversation easier. They spoke like two strangers who shared a love for honest work. The man explained how his father had started the shop 40 years ago, back when most people still valued handmade goods. Now big brands had taken over, but he refused to change. "I don't make millions," he said, "but I sleep easy." Keanu nodded thoughtfully. "That's rare these days," he said. "But it's good you kept it going." The man shrugged modestly. "Someone has to. My daughter tells me to move online, but I like talking to people face to face. You learn a lot about someone when they hold something and decide if it's worth their money." Keanu smiled again, thinking about what had just happened across the street. "Yeah," he said. "Sometimes people judge the wrong things." The man looked at him curiously. "You sound like you've seen that happen before." Keanu chuckled lightly. "Once or twice," he said, keeping his tone easy. He didn't mention the store or the laughter. He didn't need to. The owner picked up a jacket from a nearby rack, dark brown leather with deep stitching along the edges. "Try this one," he said. "I think it'd suit you." Keanu hesitated. "Oh, I don't want to wrinkle it or anything." The man waved his hand. "Don't worry about that. Clothes are meant to be worn, not stared at." That line made Keanu grin. He slipped his arms into the jacket and it fit perfectly, snug across the shoulders but soft enough to move in. He turned toward the mirror and looked at himself. This jacket didn't make him look rich or famous, it made him look like himself. And that, he realized, was what he liked about it. "How does it feel?" the owner asked. Keanu moved his arm slightly, testing the fit. "Like it's been waiting for me," he said. The man laughed. "Then that's the right one." Keanu looked down at the price tag. It was far less than the luxury store's jacket, but still fair for the quality. "You make these yourself?" "Some," the owner said proudly. "Others come from small makers I've known for years. No factories, no rush, just hands and patience." Keanu nodded again. "That's how it should be." While they talked, another customer entered the store, a young man with a backpack and a sketchbook in his hands. He greeted the owner warmly. "Hey, I finished the designs you asked for," he said, setting the book on the counter. The owner smiled. "You're fast. Let's see." Keanu stepped aside, watching quietly as the man flipped through pages filled with sketches, new ideas for jackets, bags, and belts. Each drawing was full of passion. "These are incredible," Keanu said. The young man looked up, surprised that a stranger had spoken to him. "Oh, thanks," he said shyly. "I'm trying to get my work out there. Maybe one day I'll have my own line." "You will," Keanu said sincerely. "Keep working. You've got real talent." The young man smiled, clearly encouraged. He didn't recognize Keanu either, but he could tell that this stranger's words were genuine. The owner turned to Keanu. "You know," he said thoughtfully, "I think this jacket suits you more than anyone who's tried it. I'll give you a small discount." Keanu shook his head. "No need, I'll pay full price," he said firmly. "You've earned it." The man blinked, surprised. "That's kind of you." Keanu reached for his wallet and placed his card on the counter. While the owner processed the payment, Keanu looked around the shop again, at the jackets hanging neatly, the handmade belts, the tiny details that made the place feel alive. There was warmth here, a sense of honesty that couldn't be bought. When the owner handed him the receipt, Keanu added a folded note on top. "For you," he said. The man looked down, puzzled. "Sir, this is way too much," he said when he realized it was a large tip. Keanu smiled softly. "You've built something special here. I want you to keep it that way." The owner stood speechless for a moment. "Thank you," he finally said, his voice a little shaky. "That means a lot." Keanu nodded once and picked up the paper bag with the jacket inside. "It's me who should thank you," he said, "for being real." As he turned to leave, the young designer called out, "Hey, what's your name? I'd like to thank you properly." Keanu hesitated for a moment and smiled over his shoulder. "Just someone who likes good work," he said, then stepped outside. The bell rang again as the door closed, and for a few seconds, the little shop was silent. The owner looked at the note still in his hand and shook his head in disbelief. "What a man," he whispered. The young designer peeked through the window. "He looks familiar," he said. "Doesn't he?" The owner frowned, thinking. "Yeah, now that you mention it." Across the street, a man with a camera stopped on the sidewalk. He had been taking pictures of storefronts for a blog, but when he saw Keanu Reeves walking out of the small boutique, holding a paper bag, his eyes widened. He lowered the camera, blinked twice, then lifted it again. Click. The shutter sound echoed quietly. He took another photo, Keanu smiling as he held the door for an elderly woman passing by. Click. Then another, Keanu walking down the street, head slightly lowered, blending into the crowd. Click. The photographer hadn't meant to capture gossip or drama. He just liked moments of kindness, and this one felt right. He didn't know that these photos would soon spread across the internet, sparking one of the most talked about stories of the week. Back inside the small boutique, the owner was still holding the note. Curiosity got the better of him, and he unfolded it carefully. Inside, there were a few simple words written in neat handwriting. "For people like you, the world feels a little more honest." "Thank you." The owner smiled, his eyes soft. "Whoever he is," he said quietly, "he gets it." Later that afternoon, the boutique stayed busy. A few more customers came in, some browsing, some buying. The owner went about his work, but every now and then, he'd glance at the paper note tucked under the counter and smile. Meanwhile, across the street, the luxury store buzzed with a very different kind of energy. The same saleswomen from earlier were still talking about what had happened. "I swear," one of them said, "that was really him. Keanu Reeves. I saw the photo online already. Someone just posted it." The woman who had laughed earlier turned pale. "Already?" she asked. "Yeah," the other said, showing her phone. "It's him, same clothes, same backpack. Look, he's carrying a shopping bag from that little boutique across the street." The woman's stomach sank. "Oh no," she whispered. "We laughed at him. We literally laughed at Keanu Reeves." The other employee tried to comfort her, but it was useless. Within hours, the photos began to spread. People on social media noticed the contrast, the plain outfit, the small bag, the warmth in his expression. Comments poured in, praising his simplicity, his humility, his quiet kindness. And then someone recognized the store across the street. "That's the same area where a luxury store treated him badly," one person wrote. He walked out and went to a small boutique instead. The story took off like wildfire. By the next day, news outlets were picking it up. Headlines appeared everywhere. Keanu Reeves chooses local boutique over luxury brand after being judged for his appearance. But Keanu wasn't online to see it. That evening, he was at home, sitting quietly by the window with a cup of tea, wearing the same jacket he'd bought. He wasn't thinking about the laughter or the store. He was thinking about how peaceful it had felt to talk to someone who valued people more than profit. For him, that was enough. Back in the small boutique, the owner was closing up when his phone started buzzing. His daughter had seen the story online and called immediately. "Dad, do you know who that man was?" she asked, almost shouting. The owner laughed. "I do now," he said. "But you know what? It doesn't change anything." "You were nice to Keanu Reeves," she said excitedly. "The internet's going crazy about it," he smiled. "I was nice to a man who liked my jackets," he said. "That's all." His daughter laughed through the phone. "You never change, do you?" "I hope not," he replied. After hanging up, he turned off the lights and locked the door. As he walked home, he thought about the quiet stranger with kind eyes and simple manners. He didn't know why, but he had a feeling that moment would stay with him forever. The next morning, the small boutique was bustling with energy. The owner had arrived early as usual, opening the door and letting in the fresh air. The warm scent of leather and cedar filled the space, and the familiar hum of his coffee machine began to fill the room. But today was different. As he wiped down the counter, the phone rang. It wasn't the usual customer inquiry about a jacket or a small order. It was something else entirely. "Hello?" The owner answered, his voice still thick with sleep. "Hi, is this the store on Oak Street?" the voice on the other end asked. It was a young woman's voice, calm but slightly trembling. "I saw your store mentioned online. Is it true that Keanu Reeves was there yesterday?" The owner paused for a moment, the weight of the question settling on him. He'd expected the photos to surface, but hearing the question out loud made everything feel a little surreal. Yes, it is," he said slowly. "He was here." "Just bought a jacket," the voice on the other end gasped. "I knew it, oh my gosh. You're really lucky. Do you know how many people would pay to just meet him, let alone have him walk into their store?" The owner laughed softly. "I guess I'm lucky in that way." But luck wasn't the word that most people were using after the photos of Keanu left the boutique. Over the next few hours, social media began to explode. A few simple photos of Keanu walking out of the store, holding a shopping bag with the boutique's name on it, quickly went viral. One of the first posts appeared on Twitter, where someone had shared a photo of Keanu leaving the boutique with the caption, "Keanu Reeves shopping like a regular guy. A true legend." The post gained thousands of likes and retweets in just a few minutes. Soon after, a video surfaced, taken by a passerby on the street. The video showed Keanu walking calmly, no security guards in sight, and just taking a moment to smile at an elderly woman who was walking past. The video was quiet, raw, and filled with everyday moments that felt special. The captions under the video varied from "Keanu just being Keanu" to "He's everything the media says he is," and more. In just an hour, the story was everywhere. By lunchtime, the news was picking up. The small boutique in the corner of Oak Street was being talked about on every major social media platform. But it wasn't the high-end luxury store across the street that people were focused on. It was the boutique, the quiet little shop with a humble owner who had simply treated Keanu like a person. The owner sat behind the counter trying to process what was happening. His phone buzzed again. This time it was a local news outlet asking for an interview. Then came another message. A journalist from a lifestyle magazine wanting to feature the store in an article about humble luxury. The owner wasn't sure how to respond. He hadn't signed up for any of this. He had just been kind to a customer like he had always done. But Keanu wasn't the only one who was surprised by the chain of events. The saleswomen from the luxury store across the street were staring at their phones in disbelief. "I can't believe this," one of them whispered, staring at the photos of Keanu on her screen. "He was here. How did we not recognize him?" "Everyone is talking about it," the other said. "And that boutique. People are calling it the Keanu effect. They're saying it's a place for real people, not like us." The first saleswoman frowned. "This is insane. We treated him like he was just another customer." "Well, that's the thing," the other woman said, tapping the screen. "People are saying the fact that he chose that little boutique over our store is proof of how much he values real connections. It's going viral." The irony of it wasn't lost on either of them. They'd watched Keanu walk in, dismissed him, and now within hours they were watching his story spread everywhere. They realized they had made a huge mistake. Across town, a group of online influencers was discussing the story during a live stream. A popular YouTuber known for her street-style videos was explaining how she had just learned about the Keanu photos. "I don't know about you guys," she said, adjusting her camera, "but I've been following Keanu Reeves for years. The man has this amazing ability to be everywhere and nowhere at the same time. He doesn't need to show off. He's never pretentious, and you can just tell that about him." One of her followers commented, "He's everything we should be. No drama, just realness." Another comment popped up, "Keanu doesn't care about brands. He cares about people." The YouTuber smiled. "Exactly. That's why I think this whole thing with the boutique is so powerful. It's showing us that we don't need fancy labels or high-end brands to be valued. We just need to be authentic. The words were simple, but they resonated with people. As the video went on, more and more comments flooded in. People shared their own experiences of choosing real over fake, and soon, the hashtag Keanu effect began trending. It was as if the whole world was learning a lesson in kindness, humility, and rejecting the superficial. Back at the boutique, things were changing too. The owner wasn't sure how to process all the attention. He had always been a quiet man who took pride in his work. He didn't want the fame, didn't need it. But he did appreciate the outpouring of support from customers, old and new. By early afternoon, a couple walked in, excitedly pointing at the jackets and scarves as they chatted with the owner. "We heard about the boutique on social media," the man said, grinning. "I had to check it out after hearing about Keanu. You've got something special here." The owner smiled politely, but inside he was feeling a little overwhelmed. "Thank you," he said. "It's just a small shop, but we do our best to make things that last." The woman picked up a leather bag and looked at the price tag. "The price is great too," she said. "Keanu's influence is real, huh? I was going to buy from a department store, but this feels so much better." The owner chuckled lightly. "I guess Keanu's got a way of making people think differently." The couple laughed. "Yeah, I think so. But honestly, it's not just about Keanu. It's about supporting local businesses that treat people with respect." The owner nodded, grateful for the kindness. He hadn't been expecting this, didn't know how to handle it. But he liked the idea of his small business becoming a symbol of something greater. A place where real people mattered. A place where kindness and quality came first. As the day wore on, more customers came in. Some recognized the shop from the news, while others just felt drawn to the idea of supporting a small business that treated its customers with care. Every time someone stepped inside, the owner welcomed them with the same warmth and hospitality he always had. But today it felt different. Today he could sense that people were seeking something more. They were searching for a connection that wasn't based on appearances or price tags. By the evening, the phone was still ringing. Local businesses were calling, asking if they could collaborate. A couple of nearby coffee shops even reached out, offering to partner for a special promotion to support each other. It seemed like everyone was coming together to support the idea of realness and authenticity that Keanu had inadvertently sparked. But as much as the owner appreciated the support, he remained grounded. He wasn't interested in becoming a viral sensation. He was interested in doing what he loved. And that meant making things that mattered, whether or not people were watching. That night, as he closed up the shop, he stood by the door, looking out at the quiet street. A soft breeze rustled the trees, and the world seemed to be going on as it always had. But something had shifted. People were paying more attention to the things that really mattered: kindness, honesty, and integrity. It was a lesson he hadn't expected to learn, but one he was glad to have received. The next morning, the social media frenzy continued, but by now, the story had taken on a life of its own. It was no longer just about Keanu or the boutique. It had become a movement, an unspoken promise that we could all be better, more real, more human. And in the midst of it all, Keanu remained largely silent, as he always had. He hadn't asked for any of this, but the world had decided to learn from his actions anyway. As the owner stepped into the shop that day, he felt something he hadn't in a long time: hope. People were talking about real things, not fake ones. They were choosing honesty over glamour, and for the first time in a long time, he felt like he was exactly where he needed to be. The days after Keanu's visit to the boutique felt like a whirlwind. The shop, which had once been a quiet, almost unnoticed part of the street, had transformed into something much bigger than the owner had ever expected. It wasn't just about selling jackets and scarves anymore. It had become a symbol of something deeper. The owner had spent years building his business with care. He had always believed that the value of something wasn't just in its price tag or how famous it was, but in the effort and love put into it. Keanu's visit had unwittingly made that belief go viral. Now people from all over were coming into the shop, not just to buy something, but to experience the kind of authenticity that Keanu had unknowingly reminded them of. At first, it was all overwhelming. The constant stream of messages, phone calls, and people coming through the door felt like too much. But over time, the owner found a rhythm. He would still take his time with each customer, offering them the same level of attention he had always given. His days were busier, certainly, but they were filled with the kind of work he loved. One morning, as the owner was unlocking the door, a familiar face walked in. A woman who had been there the day Keanu had visited. She recognized the owner instantly, smiling widely. "Hey, I remember you," she said cheerfully. "I came in to buy a bag that day, the day Keanu was here." The owner smiled and nodded. "Yes, I remember you as well." The woman's smile faded slightly as she looked around the store. "You know, after that story went viral, I just couldn't stop thinking about what happened. I felt like I'd walked into something special that day, and I didn't realize it at the time. I'm not just here for a jacket anymore." The owner raised an eyebrow, curious. "What do you mean?" "I mean, I've been buying from high-end stores for years," the woman said, her voice thoughtful. "But there's something about this place. Something real. When I saw the photos of Keanu walking out of here, I just thought, this is where I need to be." Her words hit him in a way he hadn't expected. He hadn't thought much about the media frenzy or how people would react, but hearing her speak with such sincerity made him realize how much people were craving authenticity. "I appreciate that," he said, his voice soft. "I just try to do things the way I always have." She smiled again. "That's the thing, though. We're all so used to everything being flashy and polished. But it's the things that have history, that are made with care, that really stick with you." She walked around the store, touching the fabrics of the jackets, appreciating the work that had gone into each one. "I want to buy something today," she said, looking up at the owner. "Not because of the buzz, but because this place makes me feel like I'm part of something." The owner nodded. "That's exactly how it should be." She picked out a scarf, a simple, earthy-toned one, and walked up to the counter to pay. As she handed over her card, she paused for a moment. "I think I'll keep coming back here for the jackets, the scarves, the bags, but mostly for the feeling it gives me. I don't think I'll ever find anything quite like it in one of those big stores." The owner smiled. "That means a lot to me. Thank you." The woman left the store, the bell above the door ringing softly behind her. The owner stood there for a moment, reflecting on what she had said. The simple act of kindness from a stranger, the unspoken lesson about what truly matters. This was what had made the story so special. Keanu's actions had reminded everyone that things didn't have to be flashy or loud to be valuable. Sometimes the quiet, humble choices were the ones that carried the most weight. Later that day, the owner received another call. This time it was from a journalist who had been following the story. She wanted to interview him for a piece about the boutique that became a movement. At first, he was hesitant. He had never been one for attention, let alone interviews. But after a moment of reflection, he agreed. It felt like an important opportunity to share what he truly believed, that in a world obsessed with status and instant gratification, there was still room for things that lasted, things that were built with integrity. The interview went well. The journalist was kind, asking thoughtful questions about his shop, his philosophy, and how the visit from Keanu had changed things. But when the topic of the viral photos came up, the owner's tone softened. "It's funny, really," he said, chuckling. "I never expected any of this. Keanu didn't come in here because he thought it would make headlines. He came in because he's just like any other person, looking for something real. He didn't want to be judged, and neither do I." The journalist smiled. "That's what everyone's saying. People are more attracted to this idea of realness than they are to shiny labels. I think that's why the story took off. It's not about Keanu being a celebrity. It's about what he chose." The owner nodded. "Exactly. It's about reminding people that we're all just trying to live our lives the best way we know how. And sometimes we just need to stop and appreciate the things that are made with care." As the interview wrapped up, the journalist thanked him for his time. "I'll be sure to share the article with you once it's out," she said. "You've got something special here." "Thank you," the owner said, feeling a little more at ease with all the attention. As the weeks went by, the story of Keanu's visit continued to resonate with people. The hashtag #NorKeanuEffect gained traction, and more people were choosing to support small businesses, seek out authenticity, and prioritize connections over materialism. It wasn't just a passing trend, it was a shift in mindset. For the owner, things had calmed down a bit. The shop was still getting more visitors, but now they were coming for the right reasons. They weren't just there to get a taste of fame. They were there because they truly appreciated the craftsmanship, the history, and the human touch that went into every piece. Even the luxury store across the street had started to take notice. The sales staff had been talking among themselves about how their own customers were beginning to prefer smaller, more authentic shops like the boutique. It seemed like the era of flashy logos and instant fame was starting to fade, replaced by a more thoughtful approach to shopping and living. One afternoon, the owner received a message from a longtime customer, a man who had bought several pieces from him over the years. The message was short but meaningful. "Hey, I saw that article about your shop. Just wanted to say thank you. You've always treated me like a person, not a paycheck. It's rare to find that these days." The owner smiled to himself, reading the message again. It was moments like these that made him realize why he did what he did. Not for the fame, not for the recognition, but because of the people. The customers who came in not just to buy something, but to be part of something real. That evening, as the sun began to set, the owner stood outside the shop, looking at the street as it slowly grew quiet. The world outside seemed to keep moving faster, but he felt at peace. He knew that the small boutique he had built wasn't just a place for buying clothes. It was a place for people to slow down, to take a moment, and to appreciate the things that truly mattered. As he locked the door that night, he felt a deep sense of gratitude. Keanu's visit had sparked something much bigger than he could have ever imagined. It had reminded people that kindness, authenticity, and connection were still worth seeking, no matter how much the world tried to convince them otherwise. And with that thought, the owner turned off the lights, ready to face another day of doing what he loved. No viral story needed. Just the quiet satisfaction of creating something that made a difference, however small. The months after Keanu's visit passed by quickly, and life began to settle back into a quieter rhythm for the boutique owner. Yet the echoes of that one simple act, a celebrity choosing to be treated like a regular person, continued to resonate in ways that none of them had expected. The small boutique that had once only been known by a few locals was now recognized all over. It had become a symbol of something bigger than just clothes and accessories. People weren't just buying jackets and scarves anymore. They were seeking an experience. They were looking for authenticity, connection, and honesty. Things they found hard to come by in the fast-paced, image-driven world outside. But despite the attention, the owner never let the fame change the way he ran his business. In fact, he made sure that the story of Keanu's visit never overshadowed the heart of what he had always wanted to create. A place where people felt seen, where they felt valued, and where the things they bought had real meaning. Over time, the rush of attention began to fade. Social media posts became less frequent, and the Hunter Keanu effect started to lose some of its steam. But for the boutique, it was never just about the viral moment. It had always been about the relationships built, the trust earned, and the quiet satisfaction of doing things the right way. One evening, as the owner sat at his desk after a long day, he found himself reflecting on everything that had changed. He thought about the countless customers who had come in since that day, all seeking something real. Many of them spoke about how they had grown tired of the usual retail experience, how it had become all about brands, trends, and chasing after something unattainable. They longed for the simplicity of a store that didn't try to sell them a dream, but instead gave them something they could believe in. The owner thought about how, just a few months ago, he had been overwhelmed by the sudden influx of attention, but now he understood. The viral nature of Keanu's visit had sparked something people had been craving for a long time. A return to authenticity, to the quiet things that matter, and that meant more to him than any amount of fame or recognition could. One afternoon, a young woman walked into the store, her face lighting up as she took in the familiar sight of the jackets and bags hanging on the walls. She had been there before, but today she seemed different, more relaxed, more content. "I can't believe how much things have changed here," she said as she approached the counter. "This place is even more special than I remember." The owner smiled and nodded, recognizing her immediately. "It's been an interesting few months," he said, "but it's all been a good kind of change." She laughed. "I'll say. I actually just came from one of those big stores across town, the ones with all the shiny windows and big signs, and I couldn't help but think there's no heart there. It's all about pushing you to buy more than you need, to chase something that's just empty." She shook her head, looking around the shop. "This place, though, it's different. You can tell it's not about selling something. It's about creating something real, something that lasts." The owner felt a wave of gratitude wash over him as he listened. He had never been someone who was motivated by money or fame. But hearing customers speak so openly about the value they saw in the store made everything worth it. In that moment, he realized something important, that what he had built was more than just a business. It was a community. It was a place where people could come and feel like they belonged, no matter who they were or where they came from. "I appreciate that," the owner said, his voice sincere. "It's always been about quality, not quantity, and I'm glad to know that's something you can feel when you're here." The young woman smiled warmly and picked out a jacket, examining the stitching and the way the leather felt beneath her fingers. "You know, I've been trying to find more ways to make my life simpler," she said as she placed the jacket on the counter. "It's funny. We live in a world that tells us we need to keep buying and upgrading and keeping up with the next thing. But I've realized that's not what makes me happy. It's the things that last, the things that are made with care that matter most." The owner nodded. "I think that's the truth. When you focus on quality over quantity, it's easier to appreciate the things you have, and that's what makes life feel richer." After she made her purchase and left the shop, the owner took a moment to reflect on her words. He had seen so many people come in with the same sentiment, that they didn't want more things, they wanted more meaning. They wanted to feel connected to what they bought, to the stories behind them, and to the people who created them. The world didn't need more stuff. It needed more substance. And the boutique, with all its humble charm, was giving people that. As he sat back in his chair, the phone rang again. This time, it was a small documentary crew that wanted to feature the shop in a segment about businesses that had been positively impacted by viral stories. They had seen the buzz surrounding the boutique and wanted to capture what it meant for the community. The owner hesitated at first. He had never been one to seek attention, but after thinking it over, he realized that if this opportunity could help spread the message of what he had built, then maybe it was worth it. A week later, the crew arrived with cameras and lights. They interviewed the owner and a few regular customers, all of whom shared stories of how the boutique had touched their lives. They talked about the quality of the products, the care the owner put into every detail, and how they felt like they were part of something more meaningful than just a transaction. The documentary was released a few months later, and it received a lot of positive attention. People from all over reached out, praising the shop for standing against the tide of consumerism and offering something real in a world that often felt fake. The owner, however, remained humble, knowing that the real value of the boutique wasn't in the media coverage. It was in the relationships he had built and the lives he had touched. Soon, other small businesses in the area began to feel the effects of the shift. More and more customers were seeking out local stores, looking for authenticity and quality over mass-produced items. There was a sense of community that had been missing for so long, and the owner was proud to see that his small corner of the world was part of that change. One day, a man came into the shop, his eyes scanning the jackets and bags as he walked slowly around the room. The owner recognized him immediately. It was the same man who had walked into the store months ago, right after Keanu's visit. At the time, the man had been skeptical of the shop's simple offerings, unsure of whether it was worth his time. "I've been thinking a lot about that day I came in," the man said, approaching the counter. "I wasn't sure if I wanted to buy anything back then, but something about this place stuck with me. I've been to a lot of stores since, but they all feel the same, overpriced, overhyped. It's just not what I'm looking for anymore." The owner smiled, feeling a sense of quiet pride. "I'm glad you came back," he said. "Sometimes it takes a little time to realize what's truly important." The man nodded. "Yeah, and I think I figured it out. I'm done with all that stuff. I want something real, something I can trust. And this place, this is where I'll be coming from now on." The owner nodded, feeling a deep sense of satisfaction. It wasn't about the viral fame. It wasn't about the money. It was about creating something lasting, something that stood the test of time. It was about offering people a space where they could step away from the noise and remember what truly mattered. As the day came to a close and the shop grew quiet once again, the owner locked the door behind him, looking out at the street. The world was changing, slowly but surely. People were beginning to understand that real value wasn't in what you could show off, but in what you could hold close. And in that moment, the owner knew that the boutique wasn't just a place for selling things. It was a place for making a difference, one person at a time. The quiet satisfaction of knowing that he had created something that mattered was all he needed. He didn't need the fame or the viral stories. All he needed was the belief that doing things the right way with care and authenticity, was always the most important thing. And so, as he stepped out into the evening air, he felt content, knowing that the journey had been worth it. The boutique had become something much more than he had ever imagined, a testament to the power of choosing realness over anything else.